Hello Internet, and welcome to my review for Tokyo Ghoul Re Episode 16. When we last left off, we dashed through the bulk of Rushima. This episode caps both Rushima and the Cochlea arc off. We had Misa and Hanbei fighting before that got interrupted by Corona, who then Corona and Hanbei fought before getting interrupted by Suzuya, and then Corona ran away to confront Kano, found out that her sister was not alive, because that was the whole thing that happened. Misa was saved by Naki, but then the two of them got confronted by Ui, before Tsukiyama showed up to rescue them, or to, help fight off Ui. And then, Hoji, I think is his name, and Akira and their squad face down Tatara before they get rescued by Takizawa, but Hoji decides to kill Takizawa anyway, and then, so Takizawa kills them all, and then the Quinxes show up, including the second-gen Quinxes, who are just not characters whatsoever, but we'll get into that. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff last week, as you can tell. But jumping into this week's episode before the credits, we see a really nicely directed, minute-long sequence of, a butterfly flying through the sunlit garden, which has not been brought up at all in the anime, despite the fact this episode very much treats it like it has. It has not. You're not missing anything. Sunlit Garden is only barely brought up by this point in the manga. Has not even been said in the anime. So, Arima makes a big deal of it in the end. You know, those of us from the Sunlit Garden, no one's said anything about the Sunlit Garden so far. But after that, we have the opening sequence, and then we get a little bit of advancement on all three of our locations on Rushima. Tsukiyama's, swung his Kagane around a little bit against Ui and his forces. Nishiki has revealed that he's been looking for Kano for some reason. He does not go into that because Kano just fucking leaves. Once Nishiki gets distracted by Shikurai and Roma, both of whom are still barely characters. Shikurai is just not a character at all, even in the manga. I know there's a game about Shikurai, but he doesn't do anything in the source material. Roma, you may remember as the girl who briefly replaced Kaneki on the staff of Anteku before Anteku fell in Season 2. But now she's a clown and fighting Nishiki. That's why she calls him Senpai throughout the episode. And most interestingly, Akira protects, as the Quinxes fight Takizawa, Urie is about to kill Takizawa, or land a good hit on Takizawa, and Akira, blocks the blow, getting a huge gash on her back in the process. And then, all of a sudden, Ghoul remembers it's a character drama. Finally! They slow down enough to have, character motivations laid out, which this season has not done in the slightest. And they're actually really good. You know, we find out that Akira has long struggled to see ghouls as, the soulless monsters, that the CCG wants her to see them as, probably due to her interactions with, Kaneki/Sasaki, who kind of blurs the line between human and ghoul. And then seeing Amon and Takizawa come back as ghouls absolutely, kind of shatters it for her. That's a really good place to, have Akira in her, development as a character. It worked really well. And because it relied solely on stuff in the 3 good seasons, does not feel like we really missed anything. In her development. There's still plenty we're missing, but not in Akira's development. And so after that, Amon tells Takizawa to take Akira away to where he has a group waiting. We eventually find out he seems to be working with the ex-Anteku crowd, which I've forgotten how that happened in the manga, but I guess it's happened. And so Amon then fights the Quinxes, including our new second-generation Quinxes, who are somehow even less characters than they were in the manga. You know, in the manga, they were barely there as well. They eventually tried to develop some of them, but it always felt like Sui Ishida just forgot to write the beginning of their story arc. Their character arcs, I mean. But yeah, I would be surprised. But honestly, the season's been cutting up it's been like just like truncating everything, and I'm not surprised the second gen Q's got the shaft. Meanwhile, on the Nishiki front, Nishiki's fighting Roma and Shikurai. They have a little bit of banter back and forth. Shikurai is like a two-part Kagane, kind of like Nutcracker did back in the day. Back last season. Not back in the day, that was like 6 months ago. Not even 6 months ago. Anyway. But for whatever reason, that doesn't work on Nishiki. And so Shikurai just fucking like hightails it out of there. And Roma's reaction is like the highlight of the episode. There's like a beat. She like watches Shikurai run away. And she turns back to Nishiki. Fighting's just so meaningless, ain't it? And it's perfect. It's great. It's the one perfect thing this season's got going for it. Speaking of things that aren't perfect, I remember Saiko's Kagane is a pretty big deal in the manga. She like finally utilizes it after Shirazu dies. And I remember last season even making reference to the fact that Saiko could not use her Kagane. Along with Mutsuki, who couldn't use his. But that just makes it all the more disappointing that her Kagane just kind of shows up this season. Like, she's just using it now. And like, sure, her Kagane is a lot of fun. She can like make it into like actual shapes. Later on, she'll like have giant like fist Kaganes like punching people. It's really funny. But it's just disappointing that it's kind of hand waved away this week. Like, I don't know what I expect. This is Ghoul Season 4, and everything is rushed and hand waved away. But yeah. So, after that, we do get a really good thing with Saiko, and that's this conversation that she has with Amon. That really, it really serves as this great showcase for Amon's development. Way back in Season 1, when he fought Kaneki during the Koreo Mono arc, he was like, this world is wrong, and it's you ghouls who are the ones screwing it up. And here, that's very much shifted into the world is wrong, but we need to do something about that. We all need to, humans and ghouls. And of course, as manga readers know, that will eventually be developed into my favorite moment in the entire series, at the very end. But we'll see that. Oh god, we better fucking see that. It's the culmination of Kaneki's entire arc. If they don't have that, the season's a fucking wreck. But yeah, anyway. That whole conversation with Amon and Saiko is nice, and seeing Saiko like try to piece together why the ghoul that's fighting them saved her way back when Karen sicked her goons on them is nice. But the fight's reliance on like Amon going Kakuja for all of like 5 seconds before Urie's new Noro-themed Quinque just like destroys it. It kind of dragged. And the characters not having really any personality whatsoever because the second gen Qs are like blank slates, just drag the scene down. And then we have what's probably going to be our most ridiculous scene because it lasts all of 90 seconds. This plot line of Marude realizing the Washus aren't just ghoul collaborators but actually ghouls. For a plotline that was introduced and resolved in the course of literally 90 seconds. I checked like the timer when it started and when it ended. It was like 13:50 something when the scene started and 15:30 something when it ended. It was like 100 seconds maybe. But given that, it kind of works. We've known Marude since season 1, since like Suzuya stole his bike to raid Aogiri. And seeing, like, the flashbacks of him growing up with Yoshitoki kind of, like, adds to the weight of their relationship in a way that this season has kind of been struggling to do. Yeah. It didn't work well, but it worked. I say it worked. And then we're checking in on Cochlea for most of the episode. We get a little quick... I'll cover this now before we leave Hiroshima. Urie, after the battle, Amon runs away. and Takizawa carrying Akira meets up with really all the ghouls. Apparently, Tsukiyama and Nishiki left where they were doing and just headed back to the boat, I guess. That was never really shown because the season is cutting everything. It thinks it doesn't need to, but really does. And then Urie finds Mutsuki, not Mitsuki. That is the wrong show. Urie finds Mutsuki. And it seems that, and this is probably the worst cut the show has done if this happens. So, without getting into any spoilers, Mutsuki does some, like, dramatic shifts in his character and in his backstory, in this arc that's been kind of cut. And Mutsuki's character drives the story from here on out. Mutsuki is a major player in ways that we haven't really seen him be before. And by not having his development, it kind of, without seeing what happened with Mutsuki in that cave, the rest of the show will not make sense. It's super important to everything that comes after, and without it, it's just nonsensical. But anyway, on to Cochlea. Arima starts telling Kaneki everything. Including, like, the Washu aren't just ghoul collaborators, they're ghouls, which we just found out with the Yoshitoki thing. And I feel like those two lines, like that line and that scene were, like, connected in the manga. As Arima says that, we cut to Marude figuring it all out, I think. Don't hold me to that. We see Donato's escaped. He and Uda have teamed up with Furuta and the V members to kill the head Washu, Tsuneyoshi. That'll be very important later on, but it's also just kind of skimmed over, kind of like it was in the manga, though. Toka and company are fighting a pair of investigators, one of whom will become very important later on, as when they try to make the second gen Qs matter, but they don't. Don't worry. Don't worry if you don't. The second gen Quinxes do not matter whatsoever. And then, but one of Arima's investigators, Takahiriko, who is best known for Irimi's, in the Anteku raid, you have a villager number 2 kind of face quip, was directed at him. He's also kind of a big follower of Arima. And he shows up with a letter of resignation, because I guess Arima told him to, if, from an anime-only standpoint, it would have to look like Arima just, like, told him to betray the CCG if anything happened, I guess. Which is mostly what happened, yeah. But it just kind of seems out of nowhere, if you're not caught up with the manga. So yeah, that's kind of a mess. But all of this does lead to one of the series' all-time best twists. And that is that there is no One-Eyed King. The One-Eyed King was a propaganda tool propped up by Arima and Eto, so that when Kaneki eventually killed him, the One-Eyed King, being Arima, Kaneki would then become the One-Eyed King. Because the One-Eyed King in this case being because only Arima's left eye works, his right eye is, like, clouded over by glaucoma. And this... So we kind of lack the why Arima did this in the anime. I feel like the manga was a little bit better on the why Arima did this front. But it's kind of left vague here. But that last shot we get of Kaneki and Arima, and, like, you know, we see, like, the vast, like, array of the room, and then Kaneki and Arima, like, this tiny, tiny little corner over here, where my hands are on the screen. It might actually be over here when the video gets flipped. It kind of, like, shows how small they are in this, like, gigantic world. You know, of Washus and Vs and clowns, and Kaneki's just one guy, and he kind of has to deal with all that now, because Arima's dead, and it's just him and his friends. That's where the episode leaves off. The next time preview, we might actually get a moment to rest. This next chunk of the manga is a lot of, like, the cast, like, figuring out the new status quo in the aftermath of these two arcs. And I still imagine this manga is going to, like, truncate the shit out of it. But honestly, I would have expected them to skip this entirely. Just because this adaptation has been so focused on action, 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 fuck all the important character world-building shit, because, again, Tokyo Ghoul is a character drama wrapped in the dressings of an action horror series, And this season, forgetting that it's a character drama is absolutely dragging it down. So yeah. All in all, this episode was weird. It kept up it had both good parts and bad parts. It kept up a lot of the problems that have plagued this whole season. The incredibly fast pacing, just blazing through everything that Studio Pierrot feels doesn't matter. Everything is caused by getting rid of Shuhei Morita, which they never should have done. But it also gave us some nice character beats. The shit with Akira, getting Arima's whole plan laid out. That's about it. The Psycho and Amon scene. Some nice character beats there. We also got one of the show's best twists, but we did not get the motivations behind it that make it so good. So, in the end, while a lot more worked this week than has worked in the past few episodes, have all been kind of trashy, it still really needs to remember to slow down and let this show breathe. You know, Ghoul, more than most action shows, really needs to breathe in order to thrive. And without that, sitting down and seeing where the characters are, those, the best episodes, even of last season, which is pretty fast-paced, the best episodes were the ones between the big battles, between the auction and the Tsukiyama extermination, before the auction. That was when the show thrived. So yeah, in the end, Ghoul just really needs to slow down. It needs to breathe in order to thrive. So I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the episode and the video. If you did, feel free to drop me a like, subscribe, or do whatever the fuck you want. I don't really care. And as always, people, keep kicking ass, and I'll see you in the future. Bye!